afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to another session at Ake Festival 2021. I am Titi Akinsanmi, and I have the immense pleasure today of having a really great chat with an amazing author who has been nominated for the Kane Prize, Bisi Adjapon. Please say a warm welcome with me. You're welcome, Bisi.
Thank you very much, Titi.
Before we get into things, I am actually going to take a moment and I am going to read a bio for those who might need to know a bit better. So, Bisi's writing has been featured in journals, in newspapers, including McSweeney's Quarterly, Washington Times, the Daily Graphic, and Chicken Bones. She founded and led the Young Shakespeare Company for about 4 years in the United States of America, and was also an international affairs specialist for the U.S. Foreign Agricultural Service, where she also won the Civil Rights Award for Human Relations. She is the author of the short story of Women and Frogs that's also been published, and has been nominated, like I mentioned, for the Kane Prize. Today, we have the opportunity to have a really good conversation with her on her book, soon to be available, The Teller of Secrets. Before we delve further into the book, I want to read something that's been written by Maza Menges, author of The Shadow King, about the Teller of Secrets. It says, melding blistering humor with razor sharp insight, the Teller of Secrets heralds a marvel of a writer, one capable of deftly balancing questions of sexuality, politics, and feminism in a novel that is a pure joy to read. This book is impossible to put down, and it's an exciting, masterful novel by an uncommonly gifted writer. So the curious cat in me goes this way and goes, PC, when you were growing up, was it an issue of, I'm going to be a writer, I want to be a writer?
I always wanted to write. I think that probably from the time I was a little girl, I was always writing letters, writing poetry. And so it's something I always wanted to do. And unfortunately, it's taking me this long because writing demands time, and I've always had a full-time job. I mean, let's face it, if you're a beginning writer, unless you have some money coming from somewhere, you have to work. You have to pay the bills, and I had 2 children to raise, so I didn't have the luxury of sitting somewhere penning a story. And so it wasn't until much later in life that I got publication. So publication is obviously different from writing, and I have been writing virtually all my life.
In being a writer all your life and getting published in short stories in journals, getting to the point of being the author of The Teller of Secrets, can you please share with us what that experience was for you?
Well, the book already existed as Of Women and Frogs. So because Of Women and Frogs had already been published, what really happened was that there was an editor who was with HarperCollins, and we got word that he was looking for books like mine. And so my agent sent it to him, and he, went for it. He decided to buy it in a preempt, actually. So it was, within 48 hours of submitting it, we had a contract. So initially, the book already existed as Of Women and Frogs. Now, Of Women and Frogs, of course, has a different story behind it altogether.
I am a Yoruba girl. So I asked myself, it sounds Yoruba, but it also has elements of a different heritage. How do you manage this? Do you get into Jollof Walks questions? Are you just like, I am not in the middle of this?
Okay, so I am indeed half Nigerian. Bisi is a Yoruba name, obviously. So I'm half Nigerian, and I was actually born in Nigeria, but I grew up in Ghana. And so Ghana has mainly been my home. Ghana is my main home. And of course, I've traveled up and down. With the Jollof Wars, I try not to get into it. I think it's very interesting belonging to 2 different countries. When I'm in Nigeria, I find myself defending Ghanaians, explaining Ghanaians, because those Nigerians who haven't traveled to Ghana, they think they know everything about Ghana, but in fact they don't. And I get the same thing. There is prejudice, on both sides of, shall I say, the divide. And in Ghana too, I find myself defending Nigerians because we have the prejudice against Nigerians. So I find myself defending Nigerians. And so when it comes to jollof, I'm not going to say anything about that, because when I was growing up, I have to say that I ate jollof in Ghana all the time. Okay. I didn't eat much jollof in Nigeria. But now, I eat jollof in Nigeria as well.
It's an acquired taste. I know it's an acquired taste. Thank you for giving us a bit more of a peep into your personality. I want us to get into the teller of secrets. Now, Dave Eggers, who is the author of A Hologram for the King, writes about the teller of secrets. It's a really wonderful story. Bisi Adjapon writes with incredible vividness and clarity. One more. Zukiswa Wana, who is the winner of the K. Selodwika Memorial Literary Award, writes, I swear, it's a universal African girl story. Would you please read an excerpt for us?
I'll read something that will address one of the themes that we have in the book. So AC, my protagonist, has been sent into the bedroom to get something, but instead of doing what she has been asked to do, AC, who is ever curious, is now, inspecting body parts. The only way to see between my legs is to lie down, but there is not enough room between the dressing mirror and the bed. I pick up the small mirror lying near to the jar of hair oil Sister Matia is waiting for, but surely she can wait a little longer. I lower my back onto the cool vinyl floor and remove my drawers. Then I draw up my knees and slip the mirror between my thighs. I get at the right purple color. I must be careful how I touch it because everything looks so delicate. The door snaps open. Sister Ya looms up. My hands attempt a quick cover-up. You bad child, Sister Ya says. My face is hot. I pray she won't raise her voice for everybody to hear, but she does. Is this what I sent you to do? I've been waiting for the oil forever. Get up!
Thank you so much. The reading through the book, one of the things that really came out to me is the tension that exists in relationships. And from the excerpt you've just read between Sister Yor and Essie, the protagonist, how do you treat this? How do you deal with this within the book? The consistent, almost, head to head that exists.
I think that every one of us, any one of us women, we've experienced this, where you would think that whether it's in the office or in the family or at church, that women would be allies. As a matter of fact, I remember reading somewhere, I think it was Roxane Gay, who said something to the effect that women really should be best friends. And she's absolutely right. We should have one another's back. But unfortunately, all is not kumbaya among women. So you find that anytime you have a group of women, for some reason, sometimes, a lot of the times I should say, women tend to not be each other's allies. So in this particular case, you see a little girl who is in a family. She's precocious, and that means she's of above average intelligence. She acts a little older than her age. She knows a lot. And instead of the sisters embracing her and maybe helping her, the big sisters helping her to channel her intelligence and maybe teach her about, how to respect her body, for instance, or how you're teaching her a little bit about, sex, so that she learns things, so that some of the things that happen to her later on don't happen to her. The first thing out of the big sister's mouth is, you're a bad child. And I think we get this a lot. I mean, if you go to a party, you notice a girl is dressed in a way that is, she's showing off her body, and
Mm,
you find it inappropriate. The first thing you notice is that a group of women will start talking about the girl, or a girl has decided to shave her hair.
mm,
We don't allow. It's almost as if we don't support one another, so long as, if somebody's view of what it is to be a woman does not suit us, we don't support that person. We criticize one another a lot. So I personally find that to be the case. Even in mother-daughter relationships, some are really, really wonderful, but sometimes, especially those people from African countries that I
mm,
have noticed, a lot of the times the women are trying to raise their children, their daughters, the same way
mhm.
they were raised, even if they didn't like what was done to them.
Exactly. So I hear you. It's not all kumbaya, is it? It's not all kumbaya amongst women, in as much as you might want that perfect cohesion where women are helping women. As a mother to two amazing girls, I hear you, I see you. And as one who was also quite precocious growing up, asking the what, the how, the when, I see SE. I see myself in Essie. I see myself in the way she's able to navigate. Now, one of the things that really struck me as well while reading the book is that you delve into weighty and sometimes quote and unquote uncomfortable themes, like the muting of sensuality of Essie, your lead character. But while doing this, you still manage to inject humor into the story, right? As a Yoruba girl, you're also half Yoruba. There's a saying that goes that it's in the midst of revelry that we find the truth. So this use of humor, was this a deliberate choice to speak to weighty subjects like the muting of sensuality?
Well, definitely. I mean, first of all, anytime you're talking about, things that are very heavy, as you talk about the book delves into difficult subjects. We've got death, we tackle abortions, we've got tragedies, we've got heartbreak, we've got, different things. And so for me, I find that laughter helps us to cope with life's difficulty. And also, really, I mean, if you're reading a book and the book is bleak, you may just, not want to continue reading. I find that humor is one of the gifts actually that we have that help us to cope with life's challenges. So I, for instance, I'm somebody that I could be crying 1 minute and I take a look at myself, I catch myself in the mirror and I burst into laughter because I'm thinking to myself, I haven't seen anybody's face look so ugly. My face is amusing to me because I'm crying and I look awful, so in all my writing, I try to inject humor into it. And there are lots and lots of humorous things that happen in life. I mean, it's sad to say that even when we have disease, when we have
Mm,
illnesses, when we have people dying, I remember Maya Angelou
mm,
wrote a memoir that was set in Ghana because she
mhm,
spent a lot of time in Ghana.
mhm.
And I think the memoir is All God's Children
Yes.
Have Traveling Shoes. And I remember she was very upset that there was a party and they had talked about all the hardship in Black America,
Mm,
and they were sharing everything that was happening to them. And then after they finished, somebody cracked jokes about it, and then there was music playing and people started to dance. What she didn't realize is that this is part of who we are sometimes. Even in Ghana, when somebody dies, we even have a party and we dance. You have funeral parties, So, yes, humor is very much a part of my writing. And think about it, when children are facing life, and they have questions. I mean, imagine a child trying to understand what sex is. It's going to be funny because the child is going to say things that an adult would not say. So we find AC saying outrageous things or asking outrageous questions, and some of her friends do, because, and that makes us laugh. But at the same time, it's very serious.
It is very serious indeed, and I totally agree with you. Maybe that's another thing we can identify between Nigerians and Ghanaians, that we know how to laugh through the hardest things in life. And as you take us on this journey with humor of Essie discovering herself and emerging to be a strong woman, there are moments when you make the choice for her to speak of herself in the third person. Can you tell me a bit more about that? For me, I'm curious. How do we spend time? How do we live through hard things in life and just we step away from ourselves and we begin to speak to ourselves or speak of ourselves in the third person? Can you chat with me about this?
Well, I think that it's a very childish thing to do, childlike thing to do, because childish is often, a negative word, but it's a childlike thing to do. In fact, when children start talking, a 2-year-old, instead of saying, I'm hungry, he could just say, Bisi is hungry, right? And so in Essie's case, I think that she uses a third person, almost as if she's talking about somebody else, when things are overwhelming and she is trying to cope with something. And I think that children can sleep through the craziest things, right? Children can step away from chaos and sleep. You can have a house full of chaos, parents fighting and everything, and a child is sleeping or playing right next to it. I think children can withdraw to a safe place. So it's safe to talk about yourself in the third person rather than to talk about yourself in the first person, because a third person allows you to go into a place of, shall I say, fantasy, where you separate yourself from the issues around you and you can pretend it's happening to somebody else.
So it's almost a removal to feel safe, and sometimes a coping mechanism to be able to review and understand what is happening.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by Essie, as you can tell. I see myself in her. And like the author Zukwiswa said, it's a universal African girl story, where you're living life, dealing with the limitations that have been put on you because of your gender, the cultural expectations that weigh upon your shoulders, and at the same time, the desires that sit in your heart to actually be able to do more. So one of the themes that emerges out of this is the theme of, identity, finding yourself, knowing who you are. Can you talk to us a bit more about this?
I think that for a child, it's kind of hard because I don't think children consciously think about identity or something like that. Children are just themselves, basically. Actually, I think so. I'm not quite sure where identity. She's not struggling with who she is. What she is struggling with is how to find her place as a woman, because she's a woman. And initially, we know that she doesn't want to be a woman because of what she perceives to be a constant disadvantage. If you're a woman, you are relegated to doing chores for men. You are expected to get married. You are expected to make sure you're a good cook, and that no matter how educated you get, how advanced you get in life, that you are supposed to be just making sure that you are able to serve a man, and you're able to be a good wife, really to be a good woman. And a good woman has all these labels. And what AC knows is that she's just herself. So she asks questions. Of course, she has a younger brother, so she can compare herself to her brother and say, why is it that I have to do this, but my brother doesn't have to? So that kind of identity is what she's trying to find. She's really trying to define what is feminism to herself. Of course, she doesn't use the word feminism because she doesn't know anything about what is going on in the world and
Mm,
feminists and that kind of thing. All she knows is how it pertains to her.
mm,
So her question is, how is she going to navigate herself through life
mm.
and not have to fit into a determined mold? She wants to just be herself, and which is, she can be a cook or not be a cook. She can be anything she wants to be, but not to follow a path that has been carved for her by society.
I appreciate that you've taken the time to speak to it. And then you mentioned something around she's going through this process, finding herself, identifying who she is. What could be, if you take the definition of feminism, she's going through that process, but doesn't have that label. And a key question I have for you, as someone who has had an amazing time, an amazing career across board, is this, and then we'll step back into the book. Would you say feminism, or would you agree with those who say feminism is un-African?
Before colonialism, let me tell you that before colonialism and its attendant Christianity
Mm,
that was imposed on us, let me tell you, Africans were always very feminist, at least this
mm,
part of Africa that I know. I can
mm,
speak to West Africans in particular. You
mm,
go into the marketplace, they dominate the area of commerce.
mhm,
They were people that were very, very adventurous. We've got women like Ya Santua, who was a
mhm.
warrior.
Yeah.
We've got, the women who went to war in Italy and in Ethiopia and all that. I think that women have always been very feminist. I think what we have had is religion that has changed the narrative, because, if you have a religion where you're supposed to submit yourself to a man, the word submission is defined, because really, if you look at it, you're supposed to submit yourselves to one another, but
Mm,
somehow everybody focuses only on the woman submitting to the man, right?
right.
So if
Mhm,
you have this and it's woven into a fear of God and it threatens your very existence, and you
mm,
think you might go to hell for not doing the right thing, then of course you're going to change. So what we have seen is a shift. And at the same time, the shift has also engendered a backlash, because the younger women are pushing back and saying, oh, no, no, we are not accepting what has now been imposed on us.
mm.
And I say this before. In fact, we have this expression, Queen Mother. In Ghana, we have
Yeah.
our traditional kings. We have the most famous that everybody knows, the King of Asante, for instance. And
Yeah.
Asantes are quite a large population. And you have a line of succession. People always say Queen Mother. It's not a Queen Mother. Go to England for that. A Queen Mother is the mother of the Queen, or the mother of the King.
Yeah.
We do have a line of succession. So we have a king and we have a queen, and the queen has a voice. And in fact, according to the Akan tradition, it
Yeah.
is the queen who selects the king. So if a king dies, for instance, it is the queen
Mhm.
who selects. And unless the person she selects is not suitable because of one scandal or the other, then that person is the one that becomes the queen. In fact, the queen is the only one that can veto something that the king says. So traditionally, women have not been these people who are, subjugated. But unfortunately, it has changed. It's rather the modern man after, post-colonial,
Yeah.
that's what I should say, post-colonial man that has become elevated, and the post-colonial woman has been pushed down. And so now we have this, and of course it's very easy, you hear it at church all the time, the pastors going on about it, and other religions, and especially Islam also, you hear it. But no, feminism is very much African. It was always African. We never even had to use the word feminist.
Mm.
This is something that came up in the 70s, and we have the feminist movement now. But we didn't need a feminist movement before we got colonized. We didn't need that. So women have always been very strong. very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and we just need to reclaim our power. And this is where you get a lot of young people very, very impatient, and they want to reclaim their power. And all of us, of course, have chosen to stand up for ourselves, and we are all expressing ourselves and doing very well. So yeah, feminism is very much an African concept.
In fact, it's so African. Feminism came after what it really is, and it's still discovering how we can totally encapsulate the expression of it on the African continent. Thank you very much. I've learned quite a bit on this. I want to draw on one thing that you mentioned, the notion of men feeling threatened, of wanting to consistently subjugate women. And I want to talk to you about it. I would also have a conversation about it. In relation to Essie's father, here is this gentleman who is conservative, who has very clear ideas on what he expects of his daughters, both Essie and her sisters. But yet consistently, we could almost say she's the first who helps the teller of secrets to emerge. Can you please chat with me about this?
I think Essie's father is just like many modern fathers, the average man. And let me say this, that though we do have, generational discourse here and there and conflict and that kind of thing, for the most part, I think you're a parent, I'm a parent, we can agree that the average parent really wants what is best for, their child.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down. I think that the problem is that we operate out of fear. So Essie's father wants Essie to grow up and to be different. He doesn't want Essie to just be somebody who stays in the kitchen cooking, or, as he puts it, fetching coffee for somebody. He wants Essie to have a career. He wants Essie to bloom, to be the best that he can be. He wants Essie to have the best education. He wants to send her to the best high school, wants her to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, he is afraid that Essie might not get a good husband or a husband at all. Because really, his mantra is that a woman's glory is her husband. So he's very much afraid that Essie will not receive glory. And as a result, on the one hand, he's pushing her to do very well, to chart new territories for herself. And on the other hand, one hand is pushing her away on and saying, go, go, go. The other hand is saying, no, not so fast. Don't do this. Don't, he is focused on trying to make sure that she gets a husband. Whether that husband is the best or not. I mean, obviously, he will not intentionally send her into danger. But what he does want is to make sure that Essie is married, because he's convinced, as part of the society, that a woman's glory is her husband. And I mean, let's face it, even now it's like that. You get, parents always very anxious for their children to get married, for their daughters to get married. Now, I'm not knocking down marriage. There are good reasons for marriage. I think it's wonderful to have a life partner that you walk through life with, that you face difficulties with, that you have children with and raise children with. It is a wonderful thing. The thing that is not wonderful about it is that if you are forced into marriage, or not forced into marriage, but encouraged to get into any marriage at all rather than be single, then the risk is there for you to fall for the wrong kind of person. The risk is there for you to get into danger. And you can even see, as Essie starts to grow up, his relationship with his father starts to shift a little. At first, he even pulls her out of the kitchen and wants her to study rather than be in the kitchen. But as she grows up, he starts to get scared. And I think a lot of well-meaning parents act out of fear that my child is going to get pregnant or be unwed and be a spinster for life, fear that my child will not be respected in society. And so this is the dilemma. So Essie's father is a very complex, lovable man, but, with some kind with some flaws, I guess, like all of us, right?
Complex, confident, but internally a bit confused. And in the process, it begins to show in the way he relates with his daughter, the apple of his eye, right? I'd like you to please read us another excerpt from The Teller of Secrets.
Anytime a letter arrives for my sisters, Papa reads it first in case it's from a man. There is no way to prevent that because the letters come through the school's post office box. To stop Papa from knowing they are going on, the children, the sisters, have created a secret language which I've managed to figure out. You just add R to every consonant to get ga, ba, fa, ga. The five vowels become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If a man wants to say darling, he writes da one, ra one, la three, naga. When my sisters talk at night, I have to keep my cheeks from spreading into smiles because I don't want them to know I understand their naughty talks. I smile at Papa, but he doesn't smile back. His eyes are fastened on the paper as he sips his Milo. He is about to put the cup to his mouth when he stops midair. Master, come here at once. She stands in the space between Papa and me, linking her fingers respectfully behind her back. Papa's eyes burn into her. Who is this man called Ebenezer? Sister Mansa blinks quickly. He's only a friend. Papa's head tilts to the side. Only a friend? And what is the meaning of this? One, la, four, va, two, ya, 4, 5. What's that? Sister Mansa blinks faster. He sends his greetings to everyone. So why can't he greet in normal language? Why the numbers and gibberish? I don't know. They stare at each other.
That's just amazing. You know, reading The Teller of Secrets every single time, there are moments that I look at my time growing up. And what you just read, BC, sincerely, we used to do. I can still remember the language when the parents are coming and you switch into them immediately. And I don't know whether it was really that they didn't know what it meant or they allowed us to continue in our blissful ignorance of their having no knowledge. But either way, consistently throughout the book, you have done an amazing job of representing the experience of the African girl. And I appreciate you for that. One thing I want to speak to, though, is the political setting, the time period that you chose to put this amazing woman, Essie, in. The time that also, to some extent, you as a Nigerian-Ghanaian chose to sit in. Why this choice in the 80s, in the era of Ghana must go?
I would say it probably started in the early 60s. I've always been, fascinated by this because my mother, my aunties and my grandparents used to talk about this. I discovered that my great-grandmother was in Ghana around the time in I believe it was, I'm not quite sure exactly the year, but it was in early 70s. When Dr. Buzia decided that was the prime minister at the time, decided that Nigerians must all leave Ghana. And I discovered that during that time, my great-grandmother was actually a trader in Ghana and was forced to flee. Oh, wow. And that was a shock to me. And then you fast forward several years later, a couple of decades later, and we have the same thing happening in Nigeria, where now Nigerians are asking Ghanaians to leave. And I think as a person who is both Nigerian and Ghanaian, it's a history that I found very painful. And so I found myself bringing this into it. And part of it also was that it eventually ushered in the Rawlings era. And
Mm.
I was very, very shocked. I was doing research, and I was surprised to find that women were blamed for the
Oh, wow.
economic hardships in Ghana. And
Oh.
of course, this is what happens with politicians, right?
Mm.
Anytime something bad happens, you know, it's always somebody else to blame. And
Mm.
in the case of the so-called revolution, women were blamed for shortages. And if you think about it, women are actually at the bottom of the chain of supply, because they are the ones who were in the market. They would go to places like the trade union congress and buy their goods,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have to line up. They would have to face rationing. And yet, when the prices were high in the market, they were the ones who were blamed for it. So I was surprised at what happened to women. And, as I thought about it, it just seemed like a good place, a good time to talk about, to write a feminist novel,
Mm.
because today I have to say that things are a lot better in Ghana, and we do, of course, still have a lot of issues with patriarchy, like many societies, but things have improved. And so for me, I was fascinated by that period in history, the whole dynamism. And also I noticed, in
Mm.
a difference between the women in Nigeria and the women in Ghana. And I talked to my grandmother, and my grandmother used to share stories with me about her sisters and how they were, and how feisty they were, and how they were traders and they were strong. And her own mother, my grandmother, as a matter of fact, used to own a hotel.
Oh,
And that
wow.
was all very fascinating to me. She owned lands and whatnot. And yet, here she was, telling me all these stories. So I found, and I've always been a big history buff anyway. I
Mhm.
love history. I'm always reading history books or historical fiction. And
Mm.
so this was a good place that I thought I could start the story, just because I was interested in history. And I also felt that a lot of the things that were happening were, influenced by history.
Influenced by history, and sometimes almost like history keeps repeating itself. Your grandmother's experience, then seeing that all of it happening, and us in present day times seeing reflections of this xenophobic behavior in other parts of the African continent. I'm
And
a
not just,
Yes, please go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, and not just in other part of the African continent. Right now, for instance, I know that we have a situation in Ghana where it's almost like the 60s again. We have a lot of
Mm.
Nigerian traders
Yeah.
in the market. And so we find this happening where their fellow Ghanaian traders are resentful because they don't want the competition, and they
Mm.
think that the Nigerians do not belong.
Mm.
And so you have, pockets of this. And yet, at the same time, there is genuine affection between the two countries. And Africa, we talk all the time about unity of Africa.
Mm.
When the World Cup was held in South Africa, you would think every South African was Ghanaian, was Nigerian. And yet, we had this xenophobia going on at some point. And this is what I find fascinating.
Mm.
I'm not suggesting that we should turn the xenophobia to the whites. I'm not
Mm.
suggesting that we should take up, our axes and whatnot and start
Mm.
hacking white people. It's just an inhuman way to deal with whatever is going on, whatever oppression is going on. But what I find fascinating is that people who are oppressed turn around and fight among themselves rather than uniting and presenting a united front. That is something that boggles my mind. Think about it. In Senegal, Wolof word for a foreigner is
Mm.
nyak, and a
Mhm.
nyak actually means a slave. And
Yes.
of course, you know who was a slave. It was a black person who was a slave, right?
Mhm.
And they had this idea that if a foreigner looked at a man, his penis would shrivel. So foreigners suddenly foreigners were being attacked. Suddenly, but guess which foreigners were being attacked? Fellow Africans. They
Right.
were not, they were not going around with machetes trying to
No.
strike the French, who in fact still hold them to some extent in subjugating. I mean, if you go to
Mhm.
Senegal, if you go to Dakar, the bulk of the wealth is held by the French,
Yeah.
and a lot of Senegalese live in poverty. It's really bad, and yet when they had this feeling that somebody could cause the pennies to shrivel, it was a black person, and so they were attacking their fellow blacks. It's something that just keeps going on. I don't understand it. Why that misdirected rage towards your own kind? So it's something that we have the OAU, African Union now. We have ECOWAS, and you think about it when you travel. If I'm going to a country like, say, Malawi, I don't need a visa if I'm a Ghanaian, if I'm an American, sorry.
Yeah.
So because I am a US citizen, if I'm going to Malawi,
Mm.
I'm going to just use my US passport because, hey, I don't need a visa. And
Mm.
yet, a Ghanaian going to Malawi needs to apply for a visa. Why?
Mm.
I had Zukiswa, who is coming to Ghana,
Yes.
and she had me on the phone filling out application forms and that kind of thing. And yet, I will have to say that in Ghana, at least we are fairly consistent. In Ghana, if you're American, if you're British, we don't care. You still need a visa.
Yeah.
But in many countries, if you have a US passport, in many countries in Africa, you don't need a visa. And yet, if you're an African, you need a visa.
Mm.
So why are we treating one another like that? It's something that I don't get. And we see it. You
Yeah.
see AC facing that when AC, there is some kind of border dispute
Mm-hmm.
between Ghana and Togo. And mind you, these are all artificial borders because at the border, you have Togolese people there who
Yeah.
are of the Ewe tribe.
Yes.
And if you go to
Yes.
Togo, they are also of the Ewe tribe.
Mm.
Many of them are related. They are
Mm.
cousins. Many of them have farms on the other side of the border. They are lands. They own land that straddle both countries. Yet once in a while, Ghana and Togo will decide they're quarreling and they're not letting Togolese in, and Togolese people are not letting Ghana in. And so you find that, what AC had to do,
Mm.
she's trekking through the forest,
Yeah.
trying to cross over to go to Nigeria by road, just because. What? I don't understand it. Or I myself, I found this happening to me, and this is what happened to AC too.
Mm.
You get to Dahomey, Benin, and you're
Yeah.
asked to pay a bribe. You
Yeah.
have to pay a bribe.
Yes.
Why? But they don't do that to the foreigner. And it's funny. I will also have to say this. Even in Ghana here, when I moved from America to Ghana,
Mm.
and I went to the harbor to claim my possessions. I had a container. I had shipped all my things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they were collecting bribes from anybody, as soon as I started talking and they saw that I came from America, they did not want any bribe from me. That the
Mm.
agent was so surprised.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's because, you know, again, the almighty American. So we sit down and we complain about, foreigners mistreating us. We complain about America. We complain about the European Union and all that. Can we start within our own Africa here? Can we change how we treat one another before and then we can complain about other people?
You've taken me on a great walk around the experiences from Nyak being called Nyak in Senegal all the way through to South Africa, where the word is Amakwedekwede, meaning, foreigner, you don't belong in this land. And consistently, it is the ones that look like us. It is the ones that we can see ourselves in, right? That are consistently being oppressed as opposed to facing where the real problem is. And, like you mentioned, this is something that Essie has to experience consistently, almost on every side, I feel, with the ones who are supposed to hold her close, be the aunties or the sisters, or even her father, or even in the workplace. And that continues to be a heavy load that in reality we need to carry. I would like to take a pause and ask again that would you share one more excerpt with us before we actually wrap up?
Talking about the use of humor, I think I would like to read a light passage for us so
Yeah,
that people know that this book is also full of light-hearted moments
yeah,
and, will entertain you a little bit. So at this stage, Essie is in high school, in an all-girls high school,
yeah.
being taught religious knowledge by a male teacher called Mr. Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just go on. In religious knowledge, Mr. Cobb has us reading about the lineage of King David, the ancestor of Jesus, and it has my head swimming. It goes like this. A lady named Naomi had two sons who married foreign women, which in itself was disobeying God because the Israelites were not supposed to marry foreigners. Though I don't really understand why, since God created those foreigners in the first place and everything he created is good. Now, when Naomi's sons died, one of the daughters in law decided to return to her people.
Mm.
Ruth, the Moabitess, chose to stay with Naomi. But a woman needs a husband, so Naomi plotted to marry her off to a relative, an
Mm.
uncle named Boaz, which is okay because the women of aunties people marry their uncles and disgusting stuff like that. To get Boaz to notice Ruth, Naomi told her to go gather what the laborers left behind after harvesting the grain, and at night time to lie at his feet.
Mm.
It is gross considering Boaz had been working in the farm all day and had dirty feet. Even if he rinsed them, I don't believe they had soap. Ruth obeyed. And here's the confusing part. The Bible says Boaz went into Ruth. Vida Aite raises her hand. Mr. Cobb, I don't understand. How can Boaz go into Ruth? I'll stop there. You have to get the book to find out how Mr. Cobb extricates himself from this line of questioning.
You know the tension, the stress between religion and being able to speak of sexuality and having curious minds that are teenagers in the room, and you trying to pass a particular message as this religious man, and you have the kids asking the questions that are sitting in between the lines, right, that are not quite said, the unspoken things. And this is something, again, we spoke earlier around how you inject humor into what could be termed even weighty subjects. And I think that's something that really sells the book for me, makes it a really great read, if you want to discover different things. So reading all of that, and seeing the scene in the class, can you tell us, share with us your perspective on how religion plays such a prominent role in controlling and trying to shape, particularly women in our society?
Oh, and religion is everything. I mean, religion is really weaponized. It's supposed to be a good thing. I mean, what is better than having a loving father and somebody who watches over you, who protects you from evil, and who makes sure that you get what you need, who provides food for you, who provides you with a job, who helps you get a car when you need it. I mean, what could be more wonderful than that? But then we see how it is used, in school. Everything becomes religious. For instance, I will take you into this. At some point, there is a character, and I won't mention who, and there
Just
is a situation where, abortion is being considered.
mm,
And think about it. This is a country, and AC describes it. Wherever you go, you see scriptures everywhere. Even now, it's like that. You come to Ghana, you have Jesus Saves Hairdressing Saloon. The Lord is my Savior, Metalworks. There is actually this shop in this hut. It is truly dilapidated, and you see a few scrap metal.
Mm.
And at the top, there is a sign that says, "In God we trust Motorworks." And what
Mm.
I always say to myself is that you really have to trust God to take your car there,
Yeah.
because they don't even look like they have tools, much less know what they are doing. But when you have scripture being all over you, when you are bombarded with scriptures all the time, and the whole idea is punishment,
Mm.
this punitive aspect of God, that if you so much as touch yourself, and you see the AC struggles a lot with guilt. I think like many people have struggled with guilt. You discover sexual pleasure, and all the fornication is a sin. You know that God is watching you, and that you could be struck down by lightning for thinking lascivious thoughts, as they say.
Mm.
And so you see, there is a lot of guilt in that. What is amazing is that this guilt,
Mm.
men don't have the same kind of guilt. Nobody tells a man, you better save yourself until marriage.
Mm.
Men are supposed to be, as a matter of fact, getting loads of practice. And if you're a man,
Practice.
you're a virgin,
Mm.
and you are, say, in your 20s, people are going to laugh at you. People are going to be very worried that your penis might not work much later when you want it to. Well, how about the woman too? I mean, let's think about it. The vagina is made up of muscles too.
Mm.
And think about it. All muscles can atrophy if it's not being used. You can develop atrophy from that. And so we see through AC that the man, if you remember, AC's brother is encouraged to actually, nobody actually tells him that, but the way they react to his budding sexuality is to say, go for it, man. Your work, the equipment works. Go for it.
Celebrate.
But the woman, it's no, thou shalt not. Now, here's the thing. The parents are right to be worried about their women, because women are the ones who are going to get pregnant. A man can physically walk away, but a woman can't. So there is room for actual concern. The question is, how do parents address this? First of all, if a woman is being told to control herself, then the man should also be told the same thing. How about men being raised? How about AC's brother being taught not to get a girl pregnant, for instance? Why is it that most contraceptives, in fact, I would say oral contraceptives are designed for women who have a more complex body? Because in fact, men tell, from what I understand, doctors say that a woman's body is very, very complex, much more complex than a man's physiognomy. So, and yet women are the ones who have to go through, taking these pills that can affect them in really adverse ways. And women are the ones who have to go through a tubal ligation. Think about it. A tubal ligation, for a woman to have her fallopian tubes tied or cut or whatever, that is a microscopic surgery that involves total anesthesia. A vasectomy is an outpatient, and it's something that happens like that, and a man goes off. And yet, a man would always take his wife to go have either an abortion or to have a tubal ligation or to take the pill. And by this men, I mean most African men. I think that more and more in the West, people are doing it. But the average African man, you go with a knife anywhere near his organ, and he's going to say no. And so I think that there is so much more emphasis on how to raise women. And we use religion to do that, to put the fear of God in them. And sometimes if the person gets pregnant, it is actually like God is punishing you for being pregnant, which is really awful. And so that, to me, is something that causes a lot of problems for women. And so I think that society, we need to shift that. And religious people, I mean, I get a headache when I listen to modern pastors go on about the ills of hell and all that. Honestly, we need to do better. We need to handle religion with caution, with proper, with a lot of wisdom, and at the same time, we need to make sure we are raising men the same way we are raising women, to be mindful of the opposite sex, and so that's very important.
Yeah, it's really amazing that the consistent weaponization of what is supposed to be a loving God, one that's supposed to be, not supposed to be, but that is one that embraces, right? As opposed to consistently like watching you with the microscope. Are you doing right? Are you doing wrong? Here's the cane. I'm going to make it happen. I see it, the way I see it is that it's almost people are infusing the desire to control, the desire to consistently be in charge of women to
Yes.
reflect what is supposed to be a loving God.
And it leads to marital problems, because you get married and suddenly, you're supposed to suddenly go from being chaste and icicle to suddenly being this wonderful woman in bed. Otherwise, your husband is going to leave you. And then the woman also becomes, the poor woman becomes responsible also for making sure his man is happy, or else poor Johnny is not happy. He's going to go dip his pole in another well. It's just not fair. So
it's a tough life. It's a tough life.
We need to recognize, and we need to recognize, and this is why the teller of secrets, she's telling all the secrets about women. We need to recognize that desire, sexual desire, emotional fulfillment, pursuing a career, and all those things are part of being a woman, and we should allow women, little girls, to grow up understanding all these things, help them to responsibly handle their desire, and help them to, at the same time, express themselves to, instead of, hitting somebody. You've seen that before. Sometimes a child is seen touching a small baby without even knowing. Somebody just hits your hand. That instinct needs to stop. In the same way that men feel free to, weigh themselves with their equipment in public, scratch themselves, we should allow the women to feel free to. If my nipples are itching and I want to scratch, I shouldn't feel as if, oh my God, they're going to think me. The kind of thing. So that's why AC is telling all the secrets.
Telling all the secrets and helping more women embrace and be their full selves. Not a person that has a certificate that's married, but one that consistently captures the full circle 360 who she is. As this African woman, I say thank you. Thank you so much for bringing us Essie, for helping her tell all the secrets so that we can be who we are. I would like you to share a few words, some wrap up around the tell us secrets. I am going to go back to it. I'm going to be flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping again, reading through it. But for you, BC, you have given us the tell us secrets. Thank you. Is there more? Can I expect another real soon?
Oh, yes. I have a book that is coming out next year around the same time. So it's already in the works. And, we're working, we are in the production stage already. So that is also coming up. And again, it's always my passion to tell women's stories, but to tell also African stories from our perspective. I think that we need more, and I hope that more women, more Africans are writing too. We need diverse voices out there. We need to tell our own stories so that we shift the narrative. It's not that, we are not thinking or that we don't have anything to say. We need to talk about the modern African woman, a post-colonial African woman, share our stories so that the children coming up, the next generation, they will also pick up the mantle and blaze their own paths. And let's do it together.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the Teller of Secrets in this small way. Thank you to the audience for taking time to actually listen to myself and BC have a great conversation across the Jollof Wars, right? Across this British colonial borders. We appreciate the time. Thank you so much and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
5 minutes madness only you can understand. Visit myspectre.com to get your Spectre experience. Spectre, loans in 5 minutes.